Welcome, Dr. Pariksith Singh, and thank you so much for making the time to have this conversation. As you know, yesterday was the birthday of Mirra Alfassa, better known as the mother in Pondicherry. I want to start by asking you, what is the significance of her birthday, which is celebrated as Darshan Day, not only in Pondicherry, but everywhere where she's regarded as a great spiritual master?
Namaste, Makarand ji. It's a pleasure to have you here after so many years. And it's a pleasure to have you move to Spring Hill. That itself is a great happening in our lives. Um, the mother, or her with her former name of Mirra Alfassa, was a unique personality and quite a dynamic woman, with no matter whichever way you look at it, whether you look at her as a leader or as a spiritual master, as a woman of a foreign origin who came to India right in the midst of India's most critical phases during its independence struggle, freedom, and post-freedom, post-independence, and really a remarkable woman. If you even from any standard, as a an artist, writer, uh, her ability to discern critical thinking, her leadership in patriotism. I mean, amazing woman. How did I come to her? I think I got roped in. I mean, I was 18 years old. I was in medical school. I met a mutual friend, Partho, who has been to our studio. Brilliant man, a master of literature, and we just started talking philosophy, logic, and he introduced me to some nice books, and then Ayn Rand being one of them, Fountainhead and Atlas Shrugged, and T.S. Eliot, four quartets. I mean, we just jumped from 18th grade, from 18 years of age, I jumped to maybe 45. Or from my 12th year in school, I just jumped to PhD level right off the bat. You just go to T.S. Eliot. You don't go to any other inferior poet. But that's what he did to me. I mean, in his own elderly, brotherly way. And so that's how he brought me to Sri Aurobindo, who, as you know, is another amazing figure of the Indian uh, transition from colonialism to a post-colonial world, a great nationalist, a poet, a writer, thinker, futurist. So if I have to describe, and that's how I got involved in this vision of a future for humanity. And to me, what she stands for today is a vision for humanity. I mean, yes, so all these great qualities, but what did she aspire for? Not only for herself or her people, but for all of us.
But what was your first moment of that contact with the mother? Because those are the really transformative moments, when you just first encountered who she was, what she stood for, all the things you've just mentioned.
The what I remember was, as I said, I just like, what was that character in Asterix who gets dropped in the cauldron, and then his Obelix, or who is that? So that, I think I just got dropped in the cauldron. When I went to the ashram, I studied. I was really excited about Sri Aurobindo. That's how I read his Sat Prem, about the adventure of consciousness, Sri
Yes.
Aurobindo, or the adventure of consciousness. And that's how I got excited about the philosophy, the literature. And then there is a very easy transition, because, she's as in India they call it the Shakti, the force.
The force. See, that's a very important point. We'll come back to that in a moment. I'll also tell you later my first so-called encounter with the mother. But I just wanted to go back to the initial question I raised.
Right.
That what is the significance of her birthday? And why do we call it Darshan Day? What
Right.
is Darshan?
It's something that I can't explain even now after all these years, but to me it's a very, in the Indian culture, your teacher, your guru, is really a representation of God. God is manifesting to you as in a form, in a name, as a human being with a personality, but something is there behind to kind of help you grow, mold you. And then seeing the guru is the greatest thing. Being connecting with the guru, and this is not just a mental connection. There's a very deep somewhere an alchemic touch. And if you can hold that, if you can keep that, that beholding is of great value. So we call this beholding or assimilating or absorbing the teacher with an open arm. We call it darshan. Darshan comes from the word drish, which means to see, but darshan is also vision. It's beholding. I don't know of any other translation
I
in
like
English.
that. I like that. I guess the darshan, in a sense, it's hard to translate,
Yes.
but it's like the vision.
Yes.
And the vision not only of the person or the
Yes.
personality, but of the force.
Right.
And historically, what happened, as you know, with the mother is that she outlived Sri Aurobindo, who
Yes.
passed in 1950 on the 5th of December. And the mother lived on till November 17th of, if I remember right, 1973.
Yes.
And then in the last about 10 years or more of her life, she also withdrew, just
Yes.
like Sri Aurobindo.
Yes.
And so she used to appear on her balcony on chosen days of the year
Yes.
where people would see her. And that sighting, that vision,
Right.
was like the darshan. And
Right.
earlier, Sri Aurobindo and the mother would sit on special occasions on a sofa, which we can see in the photos even today.
Right.
And the devotees would file past them.
Right.
So the viewing, the seeing, that vision was much more than just seeing an individual.
Yes.
And it goes back to the Hindu tradition of sighting the deity in a temple, especially in the Vaishnavite temples,
Right.
where the deity is covered in a curtain,
Right,
and then
yeah.
the curtain is unveiled, and then you
Right.
view, and
Right.
that's supposed to lift you up. So in that sense, yesterday was very significant because you can concentrate on the force that is the mother. And we'll come back to that in a moment. But with that concentration, as you said earlier, it impacts your consciousness.
Yes. Yes.
So let me now go back to that point about the mother being actually more than an individual, just as we regard all our gurus.
Right.
We don't see them as just physical entities.
Right.
But what is the force that the mother and Sri Aurobindo represent,
Right.
in today's world?
So, with my little understanding, for what little I can understand, because a lot of times what they say goes beyond my, mental understanding. So I just have to sometimes just absorb it and let it grow out. But I think the most important thing that I see is a vision of humanity transitioning to a new stage, transforming itself with the term that Bergson had used was creative evolution. Bergson, famous philosopher, Elan Vital, and he talked about how humanity can transform. And Nietzsche talked about the Übermensch, overmind, so we need to reach a new level. Because the present humanity, our mental state, we can see where the world is hurtling. We need a deeper, higher consciousness. And that seed, I think Sri Aurobindo and the mother brought it. Of course, if you go to Bergson, he talks about the creative evolution, the energy within us, the life force that is wanting to come out and grow upward and become more refined, more organized. But the practical aspect of it, how can we take this Elan Vital, my own life force, and how can I align with it? How can I conjoin and assist it if I can? Because I am the life force. How can I let it transform this personality, this name and form? That's how I approach them. And I'm trying to give this in an intellectual way. Of course, there's a deeper feeling for one's great teacher who kind of introduced one to this. And that goes beyond just intellect. There's a deep reverence for someone who opened humanity to a different way of looking.
Exactly. In fact, I just want to underscore what you said there, that the mother and, of course, Sri Aurobindo, the force, or they represent that evolutionary thrust,
Yes.
which can help us go to the next level of consciousness.
Yes.
And when we talk about Darshan Day, or when we remember the mother on her birthday, or when we invoke her force,
Right.
what we are actually doing is we are calling that higher consciousness into our lives.
Right.
Somebody in the ashram circles, there is the story about how people would be very busy because, the mother, as you said, was a great manager,
Right.
manager of materials and of men, of
Right.
people.
Right.
But there would be a number of people who would be busy night and day, despite being in the ashram, and would have no time for their sadhana, for their spiritual growth.
Right.
And they would always be saying to, the seniors like Nirodha and, Nolinida, who were senior sadhaks, they would always be saying, oh, I'm doing mother's work. I'm doing mother's work. I have no time
Right.
for my spiritual growth. And then somebody told them, do you know what mother's work is? Mother's work is to transform human nature. It's to elevate your consciousness. Are you doing that?
Right.
That is mother's work, not just getting busy
Right.
from night and day and saying, I'm doing mother's work. So the force that the mother, in a sense, represents is this force that helps us go, as you said, we are the vital force, to direct this vital force. And, we become co-partners in the evolutionary process, right?
Yes.
So I think this is a very good segue for me to also recollect, my own impression, what we might call the opening up to the force that the mother is. And, I did my PhD on a sort of esoteric topic, mysticism in Indian English poetry.
Yes.
And it had 2 chapters on Sri Aurobindo. And understanding Sri Aurobindo was so difficult, as you can imagine.
Yes.
But eventually, one chapter was on Savitri, and I believe you and I are among the few people in the world, maybe a few thousands, who have read all of Savitri, 24,000 odd lines, and it's still an incomplete poem. Another podcast for that. But so all this, reading and writing and thinking about Sri Aurobindo, and then I went back to India, and this was 1986, but it was not till 1992 that I actually visited Pondicherry. And the point I'm trying to make is that reading Sri Aurobindo is one thing, and then to feel the energy and to feel what he and the mother actually tried to accomplish in that spiritual laboratory, which is the Aurobindo Ashram, is a completely different experience. And just to complete my story, so I had read Sri Aurobindo, and I had this plan to go to Pondicherry. I had made a booking. But for whatever reason, when I arrived at the International Guest House, they said, we cannot find your booking. So I didn't know what to do, frankly. So I said, okay, let me go to the Samadhi first, which is the real lesson, that don't go anywhere. When you go to Pondicherry, go to the Samadhi and offer yourself to the divine. Open yourself up. Anyhow, that happened. And I had to, for whatever purpose, it's another story, spend the night somewhere else, where I met another gentleman who was from Tiruvannamalai, and he said, somebody's waiting for you in Tiruvannamalai. So, and that was a great, in a sense, opening for me as well, which I'll come back to. But the long and short of it is, I collected my dining room coupons from this other place, which was like a dormitory. And I was in line, I was tired, I was hungry, I was confused because I didn't have my room, and I was not used to staying in a dormitory with 7-10 other people. And I was standing in this line, and I entered the dining hall. And as you enter the dining hall, you see this almost vibrant living portrait of the mother.
Yes.
And I felt so engulfed in the love that emanated from that portrait, as if I was embraced by the mother. So I began to, understand that the mother's force is actually the force of love. Mm-hmm. And it is a force which is irresistible. So the force of evolution, the force of higher consciousness, and the force of the divine is actually the force of love, which sometimes the Christians also got right, because they said that Christ also stands for love.
Yes.
And when I walked into the dining room, that image of the mother, the welcoming reception that I got, is almost like saying, son, you're home.
Yes.
Don't worry about anything. And then, ashram food, how it is cooked, how it is served. It's the simplest
beautiful
fare.
Yes.
You can imagine, no spices, no oil, nothing,
Yes,
no
yes,
frying. So I got those pieces of bread, that,
yes,
porridge,
yes,
and the stew, the vegetable stew.
yes,
And there's a story about it that, the ashram had people from all over India and the world,
yes.
and everyone had a different temperament,
Yeah.
and everyone had different food fads.
Yes.
So the mother said, I'm going to create a menu which is the lowest common denominator.
Yes.
No
Oh, is
one
that
will
right? I didn't know that.
no one will object to it, she said,
Really?
and no one shall complain because it's got everything you need.
Really?
Now, I didn't know all of this, but I can tell you, Dr. Singh, when I sat in that dining room and had that meal, it was like ambrosia.
Yeah, it is very tasty.
And but that first time I didn't know what was going on, but I really felt that I was getting manna, divine food,
Yes.
served by the divine herself.
Right.
So the point I was trying to make is that we all come to the mother in our own way,
Yes.
and each of our stories is unique and different.
Yes.
But what is common, again, the common denominator, is that sense of being engulfed by an energy,
Right.
by an unconditional love and acceptance,
Right.
and also that push, to go forward. Because we are sluggish, we many times, we are in stasis,
Yes.
because not in ecstasis, but
Right.
just
Yeah, you're right.
so for me, that was the mother. And I'll give you one more little anecdote that on certain occasions, though they've discontinued it now, you can go to the mother's room and
Yes, you
Shorobindo's
could do
room,
that.
like on your birthday
Yes,
and other days. And once it so happened that I had that opportunity, I had that pass, and I went up. And when you go up, they give you a little card.
Yes, they do.
And,
Yes.
I
The
opened
flowers.
it, the little flowers from the samadhi,
Yes.
the dried flower, and I opened it, and the message, and mother's face, that same face, and it said, "Cleave to truth."
Cleave to truth.
That's all I needed. That's all I needed,
That's right. That's right.
So let me come back to you now. And I mean, you've made a deep study of Sri Aurobindo. I hope one of the new books is going to be on the mother. But I mean, you've written a book on the philosophy of Sri Aurobindo. You've written a book on his literature, on Sri Aurobindo and the Renaissance, literary Renaissance in India. Now, let's come back to certain aspects of the mother, which are
Yes.
different from Sri Aurobindo. Not that Sri Aurobindo did not have those aspects. You have written about letters on yoga, which are unique in their documentation in a very methodical, impersonal, almost scientific way of case studies
Yes.
of how spiritual energy acts on material, life and entities. But the mother, as you know, was an occultist. She had Jewish Sephardic a genealogy, and she went to Max Theon. She went and trained under him in North Africa,
Yes.
and he was a Kabbalist and occultist of high order. So before she met Sri Aurobindo in 1914, she had already visualized him.
Right.
And when she settled in Pondicherry permanently in 1920 and started the ashram, practically speaking, she already was highly developed.
Yes.
She was clairvoyant, she had all of those things which even today science doesn't accept. So we'll not worry about that. But what I
Right.
wanted to ask you is this, that Satprem recorded this agenda, and there the mother speaks about a number of things, the vision she had, her knowledge of her past lives, and her predictions about the future. But one of the things that has been fascinating, and we were talking about it as we came in, was this quest for physical transformation.
Yes.
Some would even say physical immortality, and what she would call the yoga of the cells. That is,
Yes.
how consciousness, is not just a mental thing. It's not just a brain activity, but it's actually something that percolates down to every cell in the body.
Yes.
So, can you tell us something about that dimension of the mother's work?
Oh my gosh, that is a. I can tell you what little I know, because that's such a remarkable exploration, but also with a little knowledge of medicine, healthcare that I have. So in the past, humanity is always focused on its mind or its spirituality, or even the vitality, energy, right? But most of the time, our spirituality was cloistered, and I really mean that word. It was withdrawn. It was not outgoing. And although there were some, like Sri Krishna, he brought it out. In the world you live, you do karma, you do action while being spiritual. But humanity keeps has a tendency of going back into the meditation rooms and the caves and the quiet place. But here, it's probably for the first time, although there may be some traces in the past, someone wanted to transform the body itself. Because the body is the vehicle of our whole being, mind, body, vital come together. And that's, we believe that the spirit, the Atma or the soul inhabits it, but always is free to leave. But here, someone for the first time is making this general, that this body itself can be transformed into a vehicle, into a better vehicle, refined vehicle, until it may reach its own perfection. Now, we see traces of this in ancient alchemic sciences, in Tantra,
in Taoism as well.
In Taoism, Baba Gorakhnath, I think there's some faint traces, like Dattatreya, they talk about merging, maybe Kashmir Shaivism, they try to talk about the body, but no one created an elaborate approach to it. This is the first time, it was an elaborate, systematic approach, comprehensive approach. Almost like Patanjali revisited, Patanjali on steroids, but for the body, right? That's how I see it. And then disseminating it across the whole globe. So anyone who wants to learn about spirituality today, you don't technically, I never went to any living master, which is what one of the requirements is. I believe the master left the word for all of us to read it whichever way we want in a modern language, although we have hard time with this classical language. But the mother simplified it to the very basics, nuggets, the things you can just easily chew on, literally, and learn from. Very simple, elegant, so beautiful. So how do you transform this body? Can a physical immortality or transformation be possible? And you were talking about today Deepak Chopra, which I would love to hear about, because you're talking about a quantum field of this body. So I would love to hear that. What do you think about it? How can this quantum world that we don't realize we inhabit, how can we crystallize it, if I may use the word, although there might be the wrong word, but how can we make that happen? And technically in the quantum world, all the multiple possibilities, infinite possibilities are right now. All the infinite worlds are converging at this moment.
Yes, the so-called multiverse idea,
right.
Multiverse. But exactly what you were saying, that the mother and Sri Aurobindo were so ahead of their times,
right,
that it took another 50 years or more for the world to catch up. And everyone is now talking in some form or the other,
right,
about physical transformation, longevity.
Right.
Some are doing it through talking about gene splicing, gene
right.
editing, others through nutrition,
right.
exercise, organ transplants,
right.
But others still are doing it through nutrients, supplements,
right.
and so forth. But there is a general move
right.
towards physical enhancement.
Right.
And it's not just that everyone wants to become a cyborg, no,
right.
but that they are exploring the biological limits of
right.
the human mechanism. And I think Deepak Chopra is an important pioneer, because he weds the modern medical scientific approach with Vedanta, with ancient Indian wisdom, if
right.
you will. And he was trained under Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, and he got his Ayurvedic training. And Ayurveda, by the way, also does this Kaya Kalpa,
right.
physical transformation. So I think that here is where the field of medicine, biomedicine, and consciousness studies and wisdom and Gnosticism have to come together.
Right.
And I think that our platform here, Welcome Home, on the one hand, for integral healing and education, and Access Healthcare Physicians, LLC, for the evidence-based modern biomedicine with the best possible, what you call the platinum care, comes in.
Right.
But what Deepak Chopra is now talking about, You remember he started with Ageless Body,
Right.
Timeless Mind, and
Right.
Demi Moore and all that.
Right.
And a lot of Hollywood stars and celebrities sort of signed up to his program because they felt that well-being
Right.
was so important for longevity as well as a disease-free body. But now he's going into this quantum field. And I just heard his new book. He's speaking about his new book. I heard him talk about that. And he says that when you're in deep meditation, what you're actually doing is you're shifting your consciousness from its entanglement with the body into another dimension, which is both timeless and beyond space. So it's beyond space-time as we normally understand and inhabit it as living organisms, okay?
Right.
So he's saying when you flip into that dimension, basically you have stopped the clock.
Right.
Because in that dimension, there is no chronology and there is no physicality.
Right.
So when you inhabit that time less, or eternity, or the eternal present, or the presentism, whatever you want to call it, when you go there every day consciously for a few minutes or an hour or so, you're actually slowing down your biological clock. And we know that your biological clock and, in a way, your chronological clock are different, because
Right.
your body may have not aged as much as someone else's body who is of the same physical age as yourself, because
Right.
of the way you've kept your health parameters under, optimum condition or homeostasis, whatever. So basically, I think that ties back into the kind of meditation the mother and Sri Aurobindo were doing, where the last essays of Sri Aurobindo were all about the body of light, where
Right.
he's actually talking about the supramental. That's another conversation, but basically that consciousness which is above and beyond the mental consciousness which we have. So if that consciousness were brought down into our body, the 7 chakras in the old tantric system, and he has that beautiful poem about that, how that light comes into each chakra.
Yes.
And then there is that transformation that happens. So I think that what the mother was saying is that yoga is not just about, some mental activity. It's not necessarily just about, quietening the mind, as Patanjali said, nor is it merely the breathing, though breathing is the bridge between the body and the mind, but that you have to align your, each cell of your body has to, as it were, vibrate to that divine vibration.
Yes.
So that alignment, according to her, and that's what Deepak Chopra is saying, that quantum, if you're aligned with that energy, then you're not in friction. You're not, it's like Zen to some extent.
Right.
You're not always clashing. And this brings us to what you were saying right at the beginning, which is how we regard everything as imbued with consciousness.
Right.
So, letters on yoga by Sri Aurobindo, that if your consciousness is highly developed and powerful, the material objects around you transform.
Yes.
Like your car will run better,
Yes.
your pots and pans will not be dented,
Yes.
your table will be happy, not just your plant. We know
Yes.
plants are happy
Right.
around
Right.
certain kinds of human beings,
Right.
and pets, of course. But more and more it is clear that all physical objects have some level or the other of consciousness.
Yes.
And around a master, you will see that the physical elements and objects and conditions are realigned in such a way that anybody who comes into that space
Right.
is affected by it, is
Right.
moved by it. And that
Right.
was the purpose of kabuki and of the aesthetics of the Japanese and, of classical music, of Ave Maria, of the chanting, the mantras, so that the entire space
Yes.
gets surcharged with that
That's right.
vibration.
That's right. Absolutely. So, I mean, I think people need to understand what they brought innovators. I see them as innovators. I see them as disruptors. Now in the startup world, we call this disruption. Disruption in the standard thought process. We have very fixed ideas about things. Someone needs to come up and shake it up. And I think, and in a typical way, she would like a Zen master hit us on our head and say, okay, you have lived up with these ideas. Now let's try new ideas. And constantly she was doing something new. It's almost like every time you read her, every year you see someone else. It's remarkable what transitions she went through, whether it was in the consciousness or in the body itself or the vital. It's really a fascinating study. And that record is a unique record.
Yes.
So I think there is much for us to learn, and then to live it, not just read and become devotees, but to see and imbibe that and absorb it and see how we can transform our lives, no matter how little it is, in quantum,
minuscule
levels. If we can do that, then I think that is the hope for humanity. If each of us could take that and transform himself or herself in our physical, all levels of consciousness.
Exactly.
Then I think that will create that space for the earth to
receive,
break through.
to break.
Yes.
You're so right. One of the things, since we're coming to the end of our time, I think that we remember the mother for was bringing a very high level of attention and perfection to simple tasks.
Yes.
And she used this as a method to teach others and also to, in a way, elevate consciousness and in a manner that we normally don't understand. So it could be just doing physical exercises. It could be playing tennis. It could be writing a little note.
Yes.
It could be speaking to a child. It could be giving somebody a toy.
Yes.
So whatever she did, she brought a very high level, high degree of perfection, beauty, and we would call it an integral perfection.
Yes.
And I'm reminded, when you said she's a disruptor, Nirod Baran, one of the great, disciples of Sri Aurobindo and the mother, he was a trained doctor from Edinburgh. And when he came to the ashram, the mother assigned him duties in the lumber room. And he writes in his diary, he was so unhappy, he felt so out of place, and he had so many doubts. He was thinking, here I am, a doctor, and I've been sent to the lumber room. And it was all a way to train his mind to get out of his cocoon.
Right.
And in 6 months, he was actually the ashram doctor. And of course, he became the the scribe of all the ashram experiments in healing as well.
Yes.
So when we continue our series on the mother, I think one way to proceed is to focus on the different phases of her life, as you've done with Sri Aurobindo, the 5 lives of Sri Aurobindo.
Yes, yes.
Because what happens to us is that we only talk about the mother after she came to Pondicherry.
Yes.
Usually after, 1920. But there's an important phase from 14 to 20. And the important phases earlier that we have alluded to, when she was a young girl, then her first marriage. But we should focus on these phases because there is much to learn, and that is how we can humanize her. We can feel a relationship with her.
Yes.
We can see the different stages through which she herself had to traverse.
Yes.
Like in prayers and meditations, we see her as a perfect disciple.
Right.
Who teaches us the art of surrender.
Right.
And then you see her as a master, as in fact almost a divine human incarnation.
Right.
And how she runs the ashram after Sri Aurobindo's passing. So I think these are some topics for us to pick up in the future.
Yeah. She started with arts. She was
With the art.
She's painted. She played the instruments. Remarkable and a very sensitive artist. But she did not tie up with one artistic form or the other. And then she moved into occultism. Then she moved into spirituality and then started studying. Actually, Swami Vivekananda, I think Raj Yoga was the book that she read. And then she came. But even then, even great management skills, great ability to educationist. You are an educator yourself. What a great educationist.
The free progress system that she evolved.
A revolution
It's a
in
revolution.
education, which humanity still has not picked up on. But hopefully someday, I would love to see that in my life, coming to fruition on Earth as a possibility or a reality even. So that would be something, that if we can touch those things, those education, the art, the physical training.
Yes. And I want to go back to one important thing you said, that she's also a great bridge between the West and the East.
Yes.
Because she, as you know, her ancestry was Egyptian, her father was Turkish.
Yes.
And of course, they went to Egypt because they were literally, as Jewish people, driven out of Spain.
Yes.
Because her Pinto was her ancestral name, her grandfather and so forth. But the point I'm trying to make is, so from there to Paris,
Yes.
and then absorbing all the currents of enlightenment, post-enlightenment,
Yes.
art, as you said, impressionism,
Right.
and then bringing all of that to India.
Yes.
And because of her, so many foreigners came to India, especially from Europe,
Yes.
but from all over the world.
Yes.
And then she established Auroville,
that is
the
the
city
great,
of the future.
Yes, yes, and what a challenge that is. And it still is. I mean, it's still that first template or a blueprint, as it were, minimal viable product, as they call it. It's still going so many iterations, and humanity is trying to come to terms with that vision. It's almost like we are being molded by that vision rather than we molding that vision. And it's really an amazing challenge thrown to us, like a gauntlet. Can you live without all these tags?
Can you live without ego?
Yeah. Yeah. And can you live
a
a different
community
life?
without an ego would be the basis of collective yoga.
Yes. Yes. The Gnostic
Society.
Gnostic community, right?
The
What was that?
Gnostic community.
Yeah. So if we can, like-spirited people coming together without ego, doing things together, what a great transformation it would be for the world. Remarkable things that have been done with her in the practical realm, not theory, practical. And humans are not keeping up to that vision. But hopefully, maybe these little points, these little flames, a drop of gold will happen somewhere, it will come together, coalesce. And that, I think, will be the crystallization of a new awareness in humanity that will prepare us for the future. Otherwise, the future is bleak. Right now, it's like we are hurtling towards a disaster. And you're talking about immortality, the technological immortality that people are talking about, the singularity that will take over human intelligence, the artificial.
That will be the end of human beings as we know them.
That's right.
That immortality would actually be the death of humanity.
That's right. So,
because machines are immortal, not
Yes,
humans as
yes,
we know them.
Yes. That brings me back to the Matrix. Mitch. Where are you, Mitch? We always come back to the Matrix.
How much time do we have?
You guys are good. It's 4:05.
Yeah, so we'll end.
Yes.
I guess you'll edit out this bit, so we'll end now. I'll say
No,
a
he
few
will
words.
keep this. This
Oh,
ghost that we have. Mitch is right there.
Oh, okay.
Mitch is my
Oh,
doppelganger.
Not on this topic.
okay. But we'll come back to that.
Yes.
So we'll now just try and wind up. Yeah. So thank you, Dr. Singh, for this wonderful conversation. And you have, in a way, shown us why it is important to be mindful of days like the mother's birthday, 21st of February, and to remember a remarkable figure that she was, and why it is Darshan Day for so many of us.
Yes.
If you like this conversation, make sure you go to Singh Talks, the series in the Welcome Home offering channel. Sorry,
Yeah.
the Welcome Home channel. We'll do this again in the Welcome Home channel. And do not forget to like and subscribe to our channel, and please share the good word.
Yes.
Spread the good word.
Yes. You must like me. Please. Like me.